The craziest thing about Peter Thiel interviews, he's the tech billionaire who funded JD Vance's entire career and is running the defense surveillance platform Palantir that's going to collect data on every American, is you go into them thinking he's going to talk about that stuff. He's going to defend it. He's going to be conservative. But what he actually says is that Greta Thunberg is the antichrist, and he knows that because the word nature doesn't appear once in the Old Testament. Bro is on some esoteric freak shit that you and I frankly can't understand. And I think it poses a real challenge to people trying to cover or understand the tech oligarchs, because we're primed to think about them, write about them, read about them as if they're like rational, coherent political actors who make decisions within a reality that the other actors in the system are in. But if you listen to Thiel in his own words explaining like why he thinks what he thinks, he says something like, and I quote, "Okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. The transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul." Brother, what? And this is like in response to a question, what do you think of AI? And he goes on this riff about trans people and then the Bible. And the interviewer, Ross Douthat, who's a conservative Christian, like pushes at that theological point a little bit and says, you know, in Christianity, the main belief is that man is fallen and that the only way we can be redeemed or perfected is through God's grace. And so this transhumanist argument that you've been making, Peter Thiel, about the way that people should fuse with computers to become immortal and perfect, and that is progress, like, isn't that kind of against Christianity? You know, isn't that a heretical kind of belief? And Thiel's reply here is to say, and I quote, "Yeah, I don't know. I think the word nature does not occur once in the Old Testament. And so there is a sense in which the way I understand the Judeo-Christian inspiration is, it is about transcending nature. It is about overcoming things." And so he's turned Christianity into a Sigma grindset hustle. Peter Thiel is literally a heretic of a type that we haven't seen since like the Renaissance. Like he's sitting here saying, I disagree with the 17th century Baconian conception of the Antichrist as an evil tech genius because I read John 15:25 somewhat differently. Like nobody else is saying that. That is not like a reasonable basis upon which to build a worldview in 2025. These are the weirdest, most obscure, most like honestly schizo references being strung together. And the crazy thing is that he'll ricochet from that like hoe-scaring religious esoterica into just like the most, you know, vanilla sort of Twitter brained take where he'll be like, oh, woke went too far. Or he'll be like, the Roman Empire was decadent. Or he'll be like, you know, the 60s, Woodstock, that was like an era. And he keeps name dropping. He's always like, oh, I was having dinner with Elon and we talked about this topic of there being 1 billion robots one day and how the Mars colony has to be a political project. But the issue is that the woke AI will follow you to Mars. And that is a direct quote. Or he'll say like he talked to Bezos or Mark Andreessen and convinced them to notice that progress has stagnated over the last 30 years, which like, again, like what are you holding in your hand right now? Has progress stagnated over the last 30 years technologically? And then he'll say things like the only 3 ideas of the future on offer in Europe are green, Sharia law, and communist totalitarian state. And it's just like, what does that even, how do you think that? But my favorite part of the interview is when he says, this is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted to the FDA. It regulates not just drugs in the US, but de facto in the whole world. Brother, like what is he thinking? Can you talk to a person like that? Do you share the same like basic context to have a conversation about what is happening in the world? The question it leaves me with most of all is like, who hurt him? Why is a man who is one of the most successful individuals by several of the metrics we use to measure people, you know, whether it's wealth, influence, power, accolades, like why is he so angry at the world? Why is he so concerned? Why is he so like aggrieved with this sense that he hates every institution and feels like they've caused stagnation because like they don't research fast enough, they don't do it well enough? And to some extent, like I see that impatience, which everybody has with these big organizations, you know, especially if you spent your life like him being someone who feels outside of them and disrupts them. You know, you notice these bureaucracies moving so slowly. You notice these fake email jobs where nobody's doing anything. You notice like, you know, the wokeness or whatever, and it annoys you. But it's like, I just don't understand, like on a human level, how it could annoy you that much. How that could be like more important to you than all the other things you could be doing with your money. Like why as a rich man are you spending your time texting your friends about conspiracy theories and poring over medieval religious texts to convince yourself that like a youth activist, Greta Thunberg, is the antichrist. Like how does a person get to that point? And maybe some of it is the way that money insulates you from people who might say no or people who might think otherwise. Maybe some of it is just being like crazy, having that dog in you. But I just like wonder, you know, how are we gonna deal with these people? Because they're not like with it. You know, they aren't here really. They're already on Mars. They're already gone.